Hi, my guest today is Sarah Stern. She's the founder and president of an organization called Emet, Endowment for Middle East Truth, which we're going to get right into as to what that implies. She has 4 decades of experience working with policymakers on Capitol Hill in Washington, as well as members of the Israeli Knesset. And she is an author. She has written for Newsweek, New Republic, The Hill, Jerusalem Post, other organizations. She has 2 books that she's authored. One of them is very fascinating, called the Cherished Illusions. And I try to look into that, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. So first of all, Sarah, welcome to Shleimus HaAretz. Thank you for carving what I know is your busy schedule and some time for us. And I think your work is crucial, but it's also crucial to get your message out to our audience, and they're very hungry to hear what you have to say. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of what your organization is all about, your involvement and so forth, I just want to know what brought Sarah Stern into this arena for 4 decades. How do you end up to be at the helm of Emet, and what keeps you moving in what I'm for sure know is a lot of opposition and hurdles?
Right. First of all, thank you so much, Rabbi, for inviting me on. It's a real honor and a privilege to be able to address this audience. I have tremendous respect for Chabad and for the late Rebbe and for all the shlichim and what they're trying to do. What brought me in? I actually, believe it or not, I went to public school. My father, Alav Shalom, was a wonderful chazan. My parents were Orthodox. I grew up in Westchester, New York, and they couldn't afford to send me to the one yeshiva around there, which was the Westchester Day School. And at that point in time, I'm sure they've changed, but at that point in time, they were offering no scholarships. I was told at a very early age that I was named for my Aunt Sarah, who was killed by the Nazis. I had always been told that she was killed in Auschwitz. I didn't know until I was old enough to go to Israel, and I sought her name out in Yad Vashem, and she wasn't listed. And then when the U.S. Holocaust Museum was opened here in Washington, D.C., I went there, and her name was not listed. And it wasn't until I was able to go to Europe with my husband, and ironically, we had a tour guide whose grandfather had been a Nazi, and her whole raison d'etre in life was Jewish genealogy. And she found out that this aunt of mine, my Aunt Sarah, had stayed behind, and I knew this. She had stayed behind because she had been married to a rabbi in a neighboring shtetl, a neighboring village, and they didn't want to leave their congregants. And she was brought to a place in Borschtov, Poland, where my father came from, which was a transit place. And as soon as the Nazis invaded Poland, they were so anxious to kill Jews that they didn't even bother putting them on the trains. They had them stripped down naked, and she was mowed down together with her infant daughters, which we heard she had infants, and we're not sure because of the time difference and the craziness of those times. But we were told that one was named Razel and one was named Rachel. And my daughter Rachel, who made Aliyah and has been living for over 10 years in Israel and has a beautiful family there, is named for Rachel. And that was seared into my identity. I think also going to public school made me into a fighter. I was always proud of being Jewish. And ironically, I didn't, have that great a Jewish education at all. But, I was the one kid that didn't go to the Friday night dances or to the football games on Saturday. And it made me stronger. And I was very proud of where I came from. And I was always pro-Israel, and it's always been central to my identity. And then Oslo happened on September 13th, 1993. And I had been working in this women's pro-Israel pack called WinPAC, and had known people from the Likud government under Yitzhak Shamir. And they called me up, 3 people, Yoram Ettinger, who's a wonderful, he was the ambassador for congressional affairs, and he still volunteers by Zoom to meet with us when we meet with members of Congress and their staffers for a Met. He's retired. He was a diplomat for the Israeli government for many years. Yossi Ben Aron, who was the chief of staff for Yitzhak Shamir, or what they call the director general of his government, and Yigal Carmon from before there was a memory. And Yigal then was, and Yigal now heads up an excellent organization called Memory, the Middle East Media Research Institute. And Yigal had been working with the Shin Bet, and he had ways of getting into the Palestinian territories and getting the videotapes of what it was that Arafat was saying to his own people in Arabic, as opposed to what he was saying to Western diplomats and journalists in English. And I did not have a chance to drink the Kool-Aid, as most of the people here in Washington did. You know, I knew that his intentions were horrific, that there really was a very, very subtle, just a hairline fracture of a difference between Hamas and Fatah. I read the Palestinian Covenant, the Palestinian Charter. It hasn't been amended, and they have the same intentions. So I felt like I had a moral imperative, because I knew the truth, to get the truth out onto Capitol Hill to our lawmakers and policymakers. And it hasn't been easy. There's been a tremendous amount of resistance. And unfortunately, there's a tremendous amount of resistance within the Jewish community. And people see this artificial distinction between Hamas and Fatah and, the Palestinian Authority. And I just feel that, particularly now, after the Gaza withdrawal of 2005, and you see how Gaza has become Hamasistan, and it's just become a launching pad for rockets, which I could go into. I was blessed to have been in Israel during the war in May of 2021, because my daughter had her youngest baby then, and I was able to get in to be with her. And to me, it was a blessing, a privilege to be able to feel what it's like to be a real Israeli, and to have 60 seconds to run into a sealed room with your children and grandchildren, and know how the enemy has been empowered by this false rhetoric. And it all starts with truth, with emet, and with sheker, with lies. And I think we have a moral imperative to tell the truth about what our people are up against.
I just was in Israel a few weeks ago. I think you can say that last comment about some of the people who live in Tel Aviv. They feel so insulated from what goes on the edges, so to speak. But I hear that your motivation started with a very horrific story in history. I'm talking about your Aunt Sarah. And we're talking about security today. You've been 40 years working in government circles. You mentioned the last 30 years now Emet has existed?
No, it's only 17 years old.
10 years.
Yeah.
It's my perception from the outside, which is very limited, that things have changed drastically in the last 4 or 5 years on Capitol Hill in the United States relationship to Israel. Am I correct?
Yes, absolutely. I've been doing this for so many years. I'm a grandmother now. I've been doing this and Israel was always a bipartisan issue. It was always a consensus issue. I think something happened I could trace it to the kind of education that our kids have been getting, especially in the Middle Eastern studies programs, but it's permeated throughout all the humanities and the social sciences, this kind of myth of intersectionality that, you have to, they perceive of Israel as being white and Ashkenazi, which is so far from the truth. There's every complexion in the world. They can perceive us of American Jews and Israelis as being, the occupiers, as being the colonizers, excuse me, the colonizers. They see this as a fight between the oppressed and the oppressor, and they look at the Israelis as the oppressor. And for a lot of this, I hate to say this, but I do blame consecutive Israeli governments who knew the truth, and they knew the truth about the nature of the beast with whom they had to deal, but they were hiding it from the world. Somehow they felt that, America, they had this, avuncular relationship. Uncle Sam will provide for them if they just gave enough. And they didn't have enough dignity to tell the truth about what their security concerns are and how Israel needs.
So are you talking about publicly or privately?
Both. I don't see where they went along, and it was like kicking the can down the road. They kept on going along. And I don't know if anybody even remembers the name Nachshon Waxman anymore, but I remember he was the first Israeli victim of Palestinian terrorism after the Oslo Accords were signed. And for a while, it was a household name. Now there have been over 2,000 innocent victims of Palestinian terrorism. From September 13th, 2001, it's been 21 years. And, and they've become statistics. And that's one of the first tragedies, I think, of the Oslo Accords, is that people have become anonymous. They become nameless. And it's so sad.
I'm going to attach this. I'm going to jump a little bit, but I'm going to attach this to the United States now in terms of, I have a feeling, it's just like a wispy feeling, that we could say the same thing about security and insecurity of the Jewish community in the United States itself. And we don't want to admit it. And I know that your organization also deals with the safety and of Jews in America and the issues of anti-Semitism. Can you comment on that? Is it a similar, where's the leadership here?
I don't know. I mean, in Boston, there's this egregious mapping project where they, our enemies have mapped out every Jewish institution so that they might know where they are to attack them.
Who's they?
Okay, I will have to get back to you on that, but it is a very radical group of Palestinians and their supporters. But it is, I've forgotten the name of who is behind it, but it is, and I will get back to you on that. But I have to tell you that it is petrifying, it's chilling. But this time they went too far because they also listed the names or the addresses of the police as though they're in cahoots with, the Zionists that control everything, and Senator Edward Markey. So Senator Edward Markey, who's a Democrat from Massachusetts and one of our most liberal, went on the offensive against them. But next time they might be smarter and not list these people. And I feel it's unbelievable how, Jews have been beat up on the streets of New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and many places, and their freedom of speech has been under attack for years and years, for decades, on college campuses. And we have not been able to secure very, very basic rights for Jews in this country. And
Yeah, I think that for the average person, this is shocking. I live in the Muncie area. We, of course, had that incident a couple of years ago where someone was chopped to death, actually, in a synagogue. And we have all the other incidents people know about. You mentioned college campus. You know, one of the most strongest presences on college campus are the shluchim of Chabad. They're known to be a welcoming, warm home for Jews of all stripes and backgrounds and et cetera, et cetera. Do you think they're doing enough on campus regarding this issue of anti-Semitism? Because it's starting to spread, I think, from the center is at the college campus level.
yes, it's obviously, that is the center, the college campus level. And I don't know if anyone is doing enough. I don't want to single out Chabad specifically. I doubt, I know for many years, the Hillels have not been doing enough. You know, I know for sure they want everybody to feel welcome, whatever flavor of Jew they are, whatever flavor of political affiliation, including J Street. You know, and J Street has sided with the enemy. They've definitely sided with the enemy and who they endorse on Capitol Hill, who they support, who they give money to. I mean, it's horrific. And I don't know. I think there are many very, very fine people that are shalichim, but they don't have the facts. People have to know about basic facts that in 1917, the Balfour Declaration offered land to the Jews in Palestine, a home of Jewish refuge. They have to know about, you know, the 1937 Peel Commission. They have to know about the 1947 division and how all of these progressive divisions in 1967, how there were the three famous no's after the Israel had fought back in their defensive wars and won, and then they went to Khartoum in the Sudan and said we will trade land for peace, and the response was no negotiations, no end of conflict, you know, and no withdrawal. There has never been, and then of course, you know, in Oslo, people have to know what was offered on May 25th, 2000 by Prime Minister Ehud Barak to Yasser Arafat, and how that was 97% of Judea and Samaria and all of Gaza, which of course they withdrew from in 2005. And this was only upped by Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and Sharm el-Sheikh 15 months later. So people don't know the basic facts. Our children have to learn these. We don't have a partner on the other side of the negotiating table that wants to divide the pie. If they do, yeah.
I think there's a lot of issues here that even if we did have a negotiating partner, so to speak, we'd have an argument how to divide the pie. But I will suggest, I'm picturing a lazy Susan. This round table that's, for those who don't know, you know, that circulates where you can pick the food on either side. So I say, let's do a switch. I suggest that your organization reach out to Chabad and Chabad reach out to your organization, because the basic platform of Chabad is the land of Israel is holy and we're not giving it up, and it comes from God. And I think that message needs to get out to everybody, including J Street and everybody else, and let them deal with what they want and how they want. That's their business. But we have to be upfront about it because it is a holy land. And on the other hand, argue from the opposite direction, which is what you're suggesting, the political side and the historical side, at least in the modern history. So how do you stay positive when you're facing, I mean, we're not even getting into Iran and you're dealing with like everything. and you're constantly immersed in it, I'm assuming, day and night. What keeps you positive?
My
Share
grand,
it.
I see, I think often if I were the last Jew in a ghetto as it was about to be liquidated by the Nazis, I would have felt this is the end of Jewish history. And we look how far Israel has gone, and I look at my grandchildren, I look at other proud Jews, Jews, I look at my son-in-law who was a lone soldier in the IDF. He was at first in the Hesder program, then he went into the regular army. They're leading a great life. On the one hand, it makes me very positive to look at all the Jews in the future generation and know, there was a time when we thought this might have been the end of Judaism. It might have been the very end, and we're still here. But on the other hand, I do think about the existential threats. That's why I have dark circles under my eyes, all the time, especially now with this Iranian nuclear deal and the ability of people to whitewash the rhetoric of our enemies and the actions of our enemies, especially, right now, 2 weeks ago, the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Administration inspectors had said, that Iran has reached this point, where they can no longer verify that their nuclear program is of peaceful purposes. Actually, they just said that last week. If they were going to take down the 27 cameras to monitor what's going on, we see that according to David Albright and Sarah Bacart, two scientists from what I like to refer to as the good ISIS, the Institute for Science and International Security, Iran already has enough highly enriched uranium for one nuclear bomb. And within 1.5 months, they will have enough highly enriched uranium for 3 bombs. This is very, very scary stuff. I think we can easily lose the third Jewish Commonwealth within our lifetime. And I think that there are many people in power who look at the whole world with a couple of aphorisms and mantras like, we have to give the JCPOA a chance, the 2015 nuclear deal, we're going to get a longer, stronger deal, and land for peace. They don't want to see whether or not these premises have been borne out by reality. They don't want to, they like to reduce all of these very complicated issues of foreign policy into 7-second sound bites. And I think that's the scary thing.
It's so fascinating because the Torah opens up with Bereshis bara Elokim. God created the world, the heavens and the earth. And Rashi asks, why are we opening up with this? We should open up with a mitzvah. And the answer is because the nations of the world are going to say, Listimatum, you stole the land. And one of the nuances in Rashi, which was written 800 years ago, is that it says, all of the nations of the world are going to argue you stole the land. Even in somewhere in South America is going to argue, and that we stole that land because that land is so precious. And it's interesting and fascinating, and more than anything else, it's coming to life that really everything comes down to the Jews again, because just before the war in World War II, which you're hooked into here because of your motivation, and now here again, the whole world is sitting with this Iranian situation. It's a serious situation, and it's all centered around the Jews. So it's time for the world to wake up that Taka, it's true, Bereshis bara Elokim b'Yisrael Yisrael b'Yisrael Torah. You're doing amazing work. We're running out of time, so I'm going to close up. Thank you for coming on. I hope we're going to be able to get another chance.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. It was really an honor and a privilege for me. And thank you for all the wonderful and amazing work you do. Thank you.
Okay, amazing.